was 29 when I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt anything that wasn't gray. Not sad, exactly. Sad would have been something. Sad would have had edges, a reason, a beginning, and an end. This was different. This was like living inside a fog that had settled so gradually. I hadn't noticed it was there until I couldn't see the sun anymore. It started with Tuesday morning in October. I woke up and couldn't find a reason to get out of bed that felt real. Not work, I could call in sick. Not breakfast, I wasn't hungry. Not the shower. What was the point of being clean if I was just going to get dirty again? I lay there for 47 minutes staring at the ceiling, trying to remember what had motivated me to get up yesterday, or the day before. The memory felt distant, like trying to recall a dream after you've been awake too long. Eventually, I got up because my bladder forced me to, not because I'd found any compelling reason to be vertical. In the bathroom mirror, I looked like myself, but dimmer somehow, like someone had adjusted the contrast on my face. My eyes were the same brown they'd always been, but flatter, like windows with no lights on behind them. I brushed my teeth because that's what people do in the morning. Not because I cared about dental hygiene or fresh breath, but because it was a thing that existed in the sequence of morning things. Brush teeth, wash face, get dressed. Actions without investment, routine without purpose. Coffee tasted like brown water. Toast felt like cardboard that required too much chewing. Everything that used to have flavor had been reduced to texture and temperature: warm, cold, crunchy, smooth. The actual taste of things had somehow become optional, and my brain had decided to stop processing it. I called in sick to work not because I felt physically ill, but because the thought of pretending to care about quarterly reports and team meetings felt impossible. Like being asked to perform surgery when your hands have gone numb. Food poisoning, I told my manager, because it was easier than explaining that I'd forgotten how to want things. I spent the day on my couch, moving from position to position every hour or so, lying down, sitting up, curled on my side. Not because any position was comfortable, but because staying still too long made me aware of existing in my body, and existing felt exhausting. Television was too bright and too loud, but silence was too empty. I settled on having the TV on with the sound turned down low, like background static that proved the world was still happening around me even if I wasn't participating in it. I ordered food delivery because the thought of cooking required caring about the outcome, and I couldn't remember how to care about whether I ate well or poorly. The delivery driver was cheerful and young, probably college-aged, probably someone who woke up each morning with plans and preferences and opinions about things. "Have a great day," he said, handing me the bag of Thai food I'd ordered because it was the first thing on the list. Not because I wanted it. "You too," I replied, and the words felt like speaking a foreign language I'd once been fluent in, but had somehow forgotten. I ate half the pad Thai standing in my kitchen, not tasting it, just fulfilling the obligation of putting food into my body so it would continue functioning. The rest went into the refrigerator, where it would sit until it spoiled because tomorrow I would forget I had food and order something else I didn't want. Wednesday was the same, but worse because now I had the additional weight of having been this way yesterday. The gray wasn't lifting, it was settling deeper like sediment in still water. I managed to shower, but only because my hair felt greasy enough that even my diminished capacity for caring about things couldn't ignore it. The water felt good, which was almost alarming. For 20 minutes, standing under the spray, I almost remembered what physical pleasure felt like. But as soon as I turned off the water, the feeling evaporated, leaving me confused about why I'd thought it mattered. Thursday, I went to work because I'd run out of reasonable excuses to stay home. I sat at my desk and went through the motions of productivity, answered emails with the minimum required words, attended meetings, and nodded at appropriate intervals. Completed tasks that felt like solving puzzles in a language I didn't care to understand. My colleague Jessica asked if I was feeling better. Much better, thanks, I said, and was surprised by how easily the lie came. Not because I was trying to deceive her, but because much better and exactly the same felt like equivalent statements. Words that meant nothing, so any words would do. You seem quiet today, she said. I nodded because quiet was accurate even if it wasn't complete. Quiet was the external manifestation of internal emptiness. The sound that absence makes when it's trying to pass for presence. Lunch was a granola bar eaten at my desk while staring at spreadsheets that might as well have been written in hieroglyphics. Numbers that represented things I was supposed to care about. Budgets, projections, goals. But caring required energy I didn't have for purposes I couldn't remember. Friday, I realized I hadn't really spoken to another human being in 4 days. Not spoken, as in exchanged thoughts or feelings or meaningful information. I'd said words that served functions. Thank you, excuse me, yes. That's fine, but I hadn't said anything that came from inside me because there didn't seem to be anything inside me to express. I tried calling my sister, thinking maybe talking to family would remind me how to be a person who had relationships with other people. Hey, stranger, she said when she answered. I was just thinking about you. How are things? How are things? Things were gray and distant and happening to someone else. Things were like watching my own life through thick glass, seeing the shapes and movements, but not being able to touch or change anything. Things are fine, I said. Just busy with work. Are you okay? You sound weird. Weird. Not sad, not upset. Not troubled. Weird. Because what I was experiencing didn't fit into the normal categories of human emotion that people know how to respond to. Just tired, I said, because tired was something people understood. Something that had solutions like sleep or coffee or vacation. Well, don't work too hard. Call me this weekend, okay? Okay. But I knew I wouldn't call, not because I didn't love her, but because love required energy and emotion and the ability to care about someone else's experience. And I was using all my resources just to keep existing from 1 hour to the next. The weekend was worse because weekends were supposed to be for things you enjoyed, and I couldn't remember what enjoyment felt like. I had books I'd been meaning to read, movies I'd been wanting to watch, projects I'd been planning to start. But wanting required hope that doing something would be better than not doing it, and hope was a concept I couldn't access. I spent Saturday moving things around my apartment. Not cleaning, not organizing, just relocating objects from one surface to another because it was movement that looked like purpose, without requiring any actual decisions about what mattered. Sunday, I lay in bed until 3 p.m. Not because I was sleepy, but because being horizontal felt more honest than pretending I had somewhere to be or something to do. Sleep was an escape from existing, but I wasn't sleeping. I was just lying there, existing as minimally as possible. When I finally got up, it was because my neighbor was playing music loudly enough that lying in bed required actively ignoring it, which was more effort than getting up and moving to the living room. I sat on my couch and tried to remember what I used to think about before everything became gray. I used to have opinions about things, preferences, plans for the future. I used to get excited about movies coming out, books being published, seasons changing. I used to care whether my apartment was clean, whether I was eating well, whether my friends were happy. All of that caring felt like something that had happened to someone else, a previous version of myself that I could remember but couldn't access, like trying to recall the details of a conversation you'd had while half asleep. Monday came again, and the week repeated itself with minor variations: work, food, sleep, existing, each day identical in its grayness. Each day requiring the same exhausting effort to perform the basic functions of being alive without any of the internal experience that usually motivated those functions. 3 weeks in, I realized this wasn't temporary sadness or stress or a bad mood that would pass. This was something that had taken up residence in my brain, something that had changed the fundamental way I experienced being alive. I made an appointment with my doctor. Not because I wanted to feel better, wanting was still beyond my reach, but because some rational part of my mind understood that this wasn't normal, wasn't sustainable, wasn't something I could manage by just waiting for it to pass. I can't feel anything, I told her, sitting in the sterile office chair looking at her concerned face. Not sad, not happy, not anything. It's like someone turned down the volume on my entire life. She asked questions, I answered honestly. How long had this been going on? 3 weeks? Maybe 4? Was I having thoughts of hurting myself? No, because that would require caring about whether I lived or died, and I'd forgotten how to care about anything. Was I sleeping? Yes, but not because I was tired, because unconsciousness was easier than consciousness. Depression, she said, clinical depression. She explained it like a medical condition, which somehow made it feel more real and less like a personal failure. A malfunction of brain chemistry, not a character defect or a choice I was making. The good news, she said, is that this is treatable. Treatable. The word felt foreign but promising. Like a door I'd forgotten existed might actually lead somewhere other than more gray rooms. Starting medication felt like an act of faith in a future version of myself that might remember how to want things again. The first few weeks brought no change except side effects that reminded me my body was still working even if my emotions weren't. But gradually, so slowly, I almost didn't notice. Colors started seeping back into the world. It began with coffee, actually tasting like coffee instead of brown water. Then music sounding like music instead of just organized noise. Then caring whether I ate dinner. Not just because my body needed fuel, but because food could be pleasant or unpleasant, and pleasant was preferable. 6 weeks later, I laughed at something on television and was startled by the sound of my own laughter, surprised to remember that my body was capable of producing joy, even in small doses. 2 months later, I called my sister back. "You sound different," she said. "Better. I feel different. Not great, but present. Like I'm actually here, instead of just existing in the shape of a person." It took almost 6 months to feel like myself again, and even then, it was a slightly different self. Someone who understood that emotions weren't optional, accessories, but essential functions. Someone who knew that gray days could settle so gradually, you didn't notice them until you'd forgotten what color looked like. I learned that depression wasn't sadness amplified, it was feeling diminished. Sensation muted, existence reduced to its most basic functions. It was the absence of emotion masquerading as emotion, emptiness that felt so complete, it seemed like fullness. But I also learned that gray days could lift, that chemistry could be recalibrated, that the capacity for caring about things could be restored even after it seemed permanently lost. These days, when I wake up in the morning, I can usually find at least one small reason to get out of bed. Coffee that tastes good, work that feels meaningful, friends whose voices I actually want to hear. Simple things that once felt impossible. Ordinary pleasures that depression had convinced me didn't really exist. The gray days still visit sometimes, but now I recognize them for what they are. Weather, not permanent climate. Something that passes through rather than something I live inside. And when they come, I remember that getting help isn't giving up on feeling better. It's the first step toward remembering what better feels like.
Some stories are felt, not spoken. If Unsaid Stories moved you even a little, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Your support helps these unsaid stories find their voice